Look at the sky, look how it shines for you and everything you do. Yeah, it was all orange. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and Sejan, immediately regretting his decision, that's my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Why don't you say hello to the people?
Well, so what Devin just did, everybody, is he just incepted all of us because we all know what it was supposed to end with, right? And so there's no catharsis because he didn't finish it. So do you know what we're all now going to do for the rest of the day, Devin? We're now all going to be singing this fucking song to ourselves. You planted this seed, and by not finishing, like not letting the tree grow, like now we're all stuck with it. Thanks, Dev.
The wedding ring is his totem. I, that's a lot of inception. I've been incepting a lot of people, turns out. I never realized how easy it is. No, but I guess in this episode, that's for the children's, right? For the kids. We're doing an episode for the kids. I wanted to start out with the orange sky in New York.
Yeah,
And
so
just like, and that's
yeah,
all
just
I
to
could
give
think
us a
of
place
was
and
to
time.
sing Yellow by Coldplay.
Well, it's a wild thing, right? Like so I never really experienced this. I don't think I ever saw it before I moved out to Utah. But in Utah, it actually unfortunately happens quite a bit during wildfire season on the West Coast, right? Washington to California these days is basically just on fire for the entirety of the summer, and then eventually the snow comes. Um, and so you get this weird effect of like various colored skies. The weirdest one I've ever seen was kind of like an off green, but yellow is the most common for sure. Yeah, and it's terrifying. It really is, and it really kind of shows you like whether like it's one of those things that really made me appreciate like how a storm down in Florida can give a fucking nightmarish thunder like a storm 3 days later up in Rhode Island, like the ways that they all kind of work together. Like this is one of those things where wildfires in Canada right now blew down some real bad shit in the air, and it was just yellow for you guys, and some of the creepiest
Well,
pictures of New
it
York
was
City
more
that
orange, but I ruined it with the Coldplay. You're right. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, we didn't have orange skies in Rhode Island, but the haze in the morning, like, I did not want to go into work. It was nature telling me you should not be outside right now. Right?
like I always knew the air quality index was like a thing that people used out in the world, like to talk about, how shit the everything has become. I didn't realize that there were people that literally base their like day to day around it until I moved out this way.
Yeah.
Being so high up, like we're I think we're at 5,000 feet, and I think I'm technically at 8,000 feet because where I am on the mountain. But like that combined with all of the wildfires that we deal with like for half the year, like people out here do legitimately have those days where they're just like air quality index is past 100, we're staying home, like the kids are staying in, we're not going to school, we're not going out, we're not doing this. Well, people cancel events one on bad days, like, and like I don't know, like in my head I was like, yeah, maybe that happens in like LA, but the idea that because of shit in LA it also happens all the way out here in Salt Lake City is just like, yeah, this is going to be a troublesome episode, I think, Dad.
Yeah, no, I get what I was reminded of with the air quality index, because our air quality was like at 147, and I'm like, that seems bad. And then I looked at the air quality
Yeah.
index in New York, and it was over 300. I was reminded of a line from the Ghostbusters video game where it's you and Ray, and he's doing the little not EKG, the PKE meter, and he goes, "Oh my God, these readings are off the charts." And then he gets excited and goes, "I'm going to have to make new charts." Like, that means nothing to me. The air quality index being a 147 in Rhode Island and like 356 in New York. Clearly 356 is a higher number, and it's not golf scores, right? The higher the number, the worse the air quality is, but that's too big a number. Like,
Big.
recontextualize it.
Well, the problem is though, the problem is again, as somebody out here that actually has to like monitor this on a
Yeah.
regular basis nowadays, like it normally sits out here somewhere between like 40 and 70. Some bad days we get up in like the 80s, right? And then like we have the wildfire days, and that's when we get up to like 120, 130 sometimes, and it's like terrifying. And you can feel it, like you can feel it in your chest, and you can smell it in the air, like it's real weird. So it needs to on a on a regular basis it needs to be get that granular, because for some people their line they people learn what their line is out here. Some people it's 60, some people it's 58, some people, like it's like people are just, they have that number that they know that when they see the AKU, they're at least they're going to do different things today. They're not going to go out and play tennis. Maybe they'll go play racquetball instead inside, right? Like that kind of shit. And like those kinds of conversations just happen just naturally out here. And so you're totally right. It just means that whatever's going on in the middle of all of it in New York, I think what that is that at some point, why are you still measuring? Like you're well past fucked. What more does anybody need to know?
That's a beautiful. If I were okay putting a cuss word in the title of an episode, that would be the title of the episode. Is we're well past fucked. Lately. Because it's, yeah, like I saw that, I'm like, oh, like those people. Why is this guy outside with his MacBook showing the color index screen so that people can understand the exact freaking Pantone color orange the sky is? Like, you should be inside of your house. And let's be honest, if you got a MacBook Pro that you can walk around New York with, you have somewhere to go. Because like that, I'm not saying like, oh, you should go to your house and denying all of the unhoused people who live in the city the size of New York. Yeah, like, I mean, there are people who like have nowhere to go in the situation there. Why are you like, I was trying to figure out the exact Pantone shade of the sky so that people could understand it better. And it's like, I guess on the one hand, thank you. But on the other hand, no, please be inside. Like, what the hell?
No, there's just priorities in these like bizarre types of situations, like these bizarre types of disasters that people are just like, people do weird shit when shit hits the fan because they honestly just don't know what else to do. Like I said, this is so out of the norm in every way.
Yeah. I don't know. And then, you know what, I'm complaining about, like, this system that goes from 40, right, the lowest that you say in Utah is like a 40, to almost 400 in terms of air quality. I'm sure it goes higher and lower in both directions. But then I think of, like, Celsius, which is, I'm fine with Celsius. It does not bother me. But the UK reporting that, like, temperatures have pushed over 30°C. And it's like, well, that doesn't sound that bad at all. But then we recontextualize it into Fahrenheit, and it's like, oh, it's like 87 degrees in the UK. And they're not used to that.
Yeah, and they don't have, like, air conditioning anywhere.
Anywhere, yeah. I remember I was in 2009, I went over for July 4th, because that's what an American thing to do. But we were over there, and, like, we watched people collapse on the subway. Because, like, you're just in, like, a steel box where the heat is magnified. And they're like, please get water. Please have water. There are people distributing water. Please do not die because of the heat. And the heat was, like, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's just like, wow. Like, you don't really think about it until it's contextualized for the region, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's, I don't know, but yeah. So this episode, that's not going to be the most fun episode. We are going to start out with the fact that, like, New York was not ready for it. And in addition to those wildfires happening up in Canada, like, that's proof of climate change and all of those things that they said were not real for so long, or people deny.
I'm sick of acting surprised to find out that climate change is real.
Yeah.
We have our whole lives, every fucking year, some major event has happened that we're just like, oh, maybe climate change is real. And like, we have never been climate change deniers. I have never.
Never.
Right. So it's not like we're coming from some place of discovery. We've always known this.
Right. But it's one of those.
Make sure that we're clear that this is not like some revelatory, like, by the way, we've come to the conclusion. No, like
but like, this should be one of those wake up call moments for anybody who is, right?
Yeah, but again, like, we've had those every year of our entire lives. I try not to be cynical, and I won't, but like, this idea that like this is going to be the one, I've heard that before.
Yeah. Well, I don't think this is going to be the one. I'm saying this should be the one. Right? Yeah. In terms of all the other ones, the one that maybe makes you wake up is when a major metropolitan area goes from, I mean, they don't have the best air quality in New York anyway because of just how densely populated it is, but that's like almost double their normal numbers.
Yep.
And and the color of the sky, what was it? It was the Red Sox. The Red Sox this week have just been the fucking worst to watch. And not just because they've been losing, but because when the scores are so, let's say, imbalanced in sports, and the Red Sox are the only ones that I watch locally, so this is what I have as a baseline for it. The announcers feel this weird desire to fill the space. And what they were talking about, it's kind of like the signs of the apocalypse. And they did 20 minutes on it being the end of days. And it's just shut the fuck up. What are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that a lot of people out there really don't love sports commentary, background.
Yeah.
You go to bars and they keep that shit on mute for a reason. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to put it. It was just I get that you guys have nothing to say because it is 8-0 right now. But you don't need to talk about this. Go back to talking about how, we're going to be sitting in the green monster seats tomorrow. I'm going to have sausages and beer because we can't do that in the booth. And it's you sound unprofessional, but it's a different kind of unprofessional besides you having a platform and telling people this could actually be the end of days based upon the Bible. And they were all yellow.
All right, Dev. You good? You get past all that? You get all past the doom and gloom?
Oh, no, because there's more doom. There's more gloom.
I was going to say that let's talk about some Twitch. Let's talk about some YouTube. Let's talk about Reddit. Let's talk about the internet just deciding to implode this week.
Can we start with something? I would like to start with the conversation I had with my father when I came home on Monday night, where he looked at me and he said, the writers have figured it out. They're no longer on strike. And I'm like, no, Dad, I don't think that's true. I just blatantly don't think that that's correct. And he's like, no, they were talking about it this morning. The strike's over. And so I go to the handy dandy internet, right? Because we're going to be kind of mean to the internet in this episode and the way that the internet is, let's say, self-regulating itself.
I mean, as creatures of the internet, as literally using the medium of the internet to get our voices out to the ears that don't even necessarily want to hear us.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're about to rip into the internet a bit this week.
Yeah. So I go to the internet and I'm like, no, what happened, Dad? And of course, you took it the way that you took it because it's all propaganda from the networks who are upset about the revenue that they're losing. But are they really losing revenue? Everybody cites the late night talk shows, and I know I've said this before, but I'm gonna say it. The late night talk shows aren't new, and it's but this deep into June, don't they usually take a pretty big hiatus anyway? Wouldn't it be reruns anyway? Is it lost revenue?
Okay, this is something that we need to kind of point to that, we are not professional writers in any fashion.
Right.
We don't know how this works. But this is the same mistake people make with teachers. Isn't it the summer? They're not in school. That's not how it works.
No, I know
there
that
are writers' rooms that are supposed to be developing the shows and for next season. I think Abbott Elementary, they came out and said that they're so many weeks behind they don't know if they're going to be able to hit their renewal date. We're starting to hear that. People are not putting together the shit for next.
But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the writers themselves, them being on strike, them not working. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how the networks are reacting to that. Because their big issue, the thing that they cited immediately was late night has gone dark. Right? And the only reason that they care about late night going dark is because that is a steady stream of revenue for NBC, CBS, and ABC.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it is. That's why they care about that. Because people know that they're going to have those eyeballs following the local news. And so ad buys.
A lot of the stuff that I've been seeing out here has been don't worry, we've got other stuff to put on. Don't worry about the fact that our normal shit's not going on. It seems to me like the networks are all scrambling to cover their ass.
Oh,
because the few bits and pieces, the things that are that were dependent on this shit are not available right now.
Right, because primetime is the big money grab, but the consistent money grab is late night. That's because it kind of it's infotainment in a lot of ways, right? So it's not just about entertaining the masses. You're what's his name has a new movie coming out, and he's going to be talking to Steve Carell about it. So Steve Carell is not a host.
But
Steve
like,
Colbert is.
no, Steve Carell would be the one on the yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, but like before reality television, like television is by and far like will always be the cheapest to produce and the most successful to bring in cash, right? So
Yeah.
it will always have the biggest net. But before reality TV was the big get, it was late night because like what you're getting at is like yes there are writers, yes there are bits, yes there is A, B, and C, right? But at the end of the day, like there was a lower buy-in to that than a sitcom or something like that. Low buy-in, high reward was always the formula for late night television, and it's why every network had one. It's why there was competition, why there was like because before reality TV, this was the moneymaker.
Yeah. Just so like that whole issue of it, right? But then I think about like they're like, oh my god, they're closed. And it's like, yeah, but it was only like 3 weeks of you not having new shows. So it's that thing. But no, I understand. Like the writers need to be working. They need to be putting this stuff together so that production can start in the actual episodes, so that there is content for people to watch when the fall season starts. And I'm going to put that in quotation marks because I kept talking about how ABC seemed to be like preparing and inoculating themselves against a writer's strike, and the Wonder Years just started up again. They held back the entire season of the Wonder Years to be a summer show.
I mean, also, part of that is that ABC is an arm of Disney.
Yeah.
And Disney's focus has shifted so much towards streaming that we talked about this a little bit last week. More and more and more, we're seeing those kinds of old school rules of when a show needs to start, how many episodes it gets, how many episodes you see at once. All of that shit's out the window now,
Yeah.
So like, yes, they probably did do exactly what you're saying, right? But I think that they are already in a good position just to be doing that because they were already considering those machinations, right? And so on a macro level, like streaming as an option for these kinds of networks and services, it really does put them in these positions to guard themselves against these kinds of incidents, right? As long as they've got the library to back it up, right? Because one of the big things about there not being streaming services last time, writers go on strike, shows get canceled. There isn't an immediate for the viewer. There's not an immediate way to access something else for even the people running it. They don't necessarily have the rights to just throw up anything they want on television when this other show's not on. They don't necessarily have access to the films depending on who owns them and where they are. Like they were so limited before. Now, by the mere fact that they have a streaming service, Disney as an entity can take any of their networks they've got a handle in and to say, Fox, ABC, and then just like yeah, sure, you're on strike, that's fine because we're gonna just push all those viewers towards the streaming service. We've got all of this shit there to keep people busy while you figure your own shit out. Like it really is kind of this tech era that we're in now has really, really, really done no favors for the writers, which to the whole point of the thing, right? Like that's exactly why they're in this position right now. Yeah. So like this is just another nail in that coffin in terms of just like streaming services are not the saviors of entertainment that we really wanted them to be when they first started.
Right. But then to go back to my father thinking the writer's strike was over is because they just report that the strike is over, right? But the strike that they're talking about is with the directors. Like that they came to a deal with the directors to avert a strike of the Directors Guild come July.
Right.
But like my father doesn't hear that. He just knows that the writers are on strike and he can't watch his things. So he hears that, he's all excited that I can go, all my stuff's going to come back. And then, like, that's not what's going to happen. But, like, the whole thing is crazy. And then also, like, the director's not standing in solidarity with the writers the way that the actors have. Like, it really just talks about everything the writers are striking for. Like, you just proved it. You just proved the disparity in our value and the way that we're treated. It was the weirdest, wackiest way to start off the week. Was my father looking me in the eye and going, writer strike's over. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't sound right, Dad. I don't know what you're talking about.
This came up a little bit last time that this big strike happened, every time this happens, but like it is really kind of a David and Goliath situation in that, like, the television networks that they are fighting against are also the ones that control the message, right?
Yeah.
And like this is getting a little like tinfoil hat, like a little
There's
too close to
nothing
tinfoil hat
tinfoil
stuff.
hat about it, man. The propaganda that they are spewing out
Yeah,
is, I mean, like the weekend after the strike started, the things that I was seeing on like the Saturday Today Show or CBS Sunday Morning was all about like how much certain writers make. Like conversations with Shonda Rhimes, who is a huge outlier in terms of being a creative presence in Hollywood and like making what you're worth. And that's because she worked and fought to become a producer on these things.
I
So
was
that
gonna say
she's
that. I mean, she's probably not making money off of writing. Like
right,
she's still
exactly.
doing the
Yeah.
writing, right? But
But
most of her money is coming from the fact that she owns the shit and she's producing the shit.
But
And all
that packet that was on CBS Sunday Morning, that again, like, and this is where it's tinfoil hattie. It really feels like they were tinfoil hattie. By the way, is a new mascot at the Say Report. They're a great character, tinfoil hattie. She's a lot of fun. Like, don't get stuck next to her at a party, but you know, if you're bored, like, have a conversation with her for 5 minutes. But the way that they put it together, it felt like they had been preparing these packages so that if a writer's strike happened, this is the stuff we can display to people so that the people, and like CBS Sunday Morning, primarily aged, geared towards an older audience, they're going to say stuff like, oh, these writers, they're so entitled, right? Like, look at that. Like, they talked about Shonda Rhimes as a writer, and it's like, yeah, Shonda Rhimes was a writer, but now that she's so much more than that. I mean, she has an Adam Sandler style deal with Netflix.
yeah,
Like, I don't know. It just, like, the whole messaging of it is, right? Because they're controlling the narrative, and they're the ones who are making, you know, middle America, the common man who doesn't live on the internet, who isn't seeing the stuff from the strikes, from the picket lines, think that, like, oh, these writers are just entitled. Why are they on strike? Why don't I have my late night with Jimmy Fallon?
yeah. I mean, you know, some of it is that like in the profession of writing, there's all sorts of different ways you can go. Just like every other profession in the world, you can specialize in certain areas. These guys happen to specialize in entertainment, right?
Yeah.
But like they're looking at what's going on in like the business sector and watching writers in those areas get kicked out left and right for things like AI, and so they don't want that to be happening in their industry. And the problem is that we're only focusing on it as an entertainment industry problem, but that's not what these writers are saying. These writers are saying that writers across the board are having these issues, and we've got this tool to take care of us, so we're trying to use it, right? And I think that's one of the other big things to look at when you can't trust the message that you're getting, because you just can't, because we know that it's coming from the people that they're fighting against, right? But when you can't trust that message and you got to start looking for your own evidence, this is the kind of shit you got to look to, right? Is you got to look at the ways in which writers are being treated everywhere, not just on TV, not just for the movies, not just for YouTube or the, you know, like whatever. Like this is a writing problem in every industry, not just the entertainment industry. We're just seeing the entertainment industry as the only ones with a proper cudgel to fight it, right? Are the only ones that are out there actually pushing back, or at least, you know, that we see. Who knows? I mean, like, I'd love to hear if there's other industries where people are actually putting their foot down about this sort of shit.
Right. But also, they're the ones, because of their size, they're the ones who are going to get the spotlight right now. It'd be great if that spotlight could, like, reflect off of other people who are in similar situations. But again, they're not going to get that messaging. People are not going to fight for the writers on, like, the Today Show, because, you know, Daddy NBC is like, no, we're gonna paint them as villains. We have to be the hero in this story.
Yeah.
Sorry, and that whole of it all. And then talking about the reality TV of it all, the Celebrities on Mars show premiered on Monday.
Yeah.
I'm not watching it, but did you hear that one of the contestants thought that Lance Armstrong was Neil Armstrong, and like literally that was all the first episode was about, was this poor person doing that?
That all it takes is one person to correct them, and they'll probably be fine. But no, of
Like
course,
we're gonna dedicate like the bulk of this episode to this whole thing.
no. I saw a poster for this in a mall like 2 weeks ago, and that's all I fucking know about this show. I honestly thought this was like I thought Elon Musk had finally just been like, I'm gonna make these people fight to be friends with me. It was I really like that's all I could think that show was.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna watch the show, but like because there's no other entertainment stuff to write about, this is what entertainment writers, right?
So as two people that have never seen this show, here is what this show must be, right? Is there has to be a pile of just like broken SpaceX like rockets and the Tesla truck, like all of the Cybertruck, like just piled up, right? And at the very top of it, I like Iron Throne-esque, a la Game of Thrones, like this, like there is Elon just sitting there with just right? And then he's just looking down upon a gladiatorial arena where you have a bunch of A, B, and C-list celebs, depending on who's at what point in their day or career, right? It's all battling it out for a seat on the bus next to Elon when he goes off to Mars, right? And that's going to be the end of every season. And everybody's going to be like, well, this is weird. Elon keeps coming back. And that's when we're going to realize that it's all been fake, right?
Yeah. That bus seat, by the way, it's on the side in the meme where you don't have the view. You're looking at the rocks.
I hope Lance Bass gets to go this time.
Lance Bass Space Camp.
Yeah, he was real bummed out that he had to give up his seat last time.
I don't know. It's for what I know about the show is that they're putting basically like a biodome habitat, like what we would establish on Mars, and then it turns into Big Brother, but with celebrities. And guess who was the first person voted out? See, Jim. First of all, when I tell you this name, you're gonna be like, "Yeah, that seems about right that they would be on this show." And then
Hold
it's
on,
like, of course, they're the one who was voted out.
Like Andy Dick? Is it Andy Dick?
No. Come on, you can't introduce Andy Dick into a habitat environment. He'll impregnate everyone. It'd be like Alien.
I was gonna say like Pauly Shore, but then I thought, no. Actually, he's got some experience in this. Would have an upper hand in the game, so he wouldn't get voted off right away.
All right, are you ready for the reveal? Everybody, drum rolls on your little
Stephen
iPods.
Baldwin. Yeah,
What?
let's do it. Stephen Baldwin.
Christopher Mintz-Plasse.
Is he really doing the reality TV?
Nick
Well, I guess he
Lovin,
was the
baby.
first one. Well, yeah, but you know what? Like as the first person voted off, you could also assume that maybe he was like the big reach, right?
He was either he was the big reach, you could say that, but also I don't know if I'd want to be stuck in a Mars style habitat with McLovin.
I don't know anything about the guy. I'm not gonna sit here and shit on him.
I'm not. No, I just feel like I was a super bad. Yeah, we all know that, Christopher. It was a huge movie.
I mean, the bigger thing is I would want to talk to him about his role in the Kick-Ass movies, but there is
I mean, do celebrities do that? Do celebrities sit around? I would like to think that they do, like, and the jobs that they did, because, like, as a non-celebrity, I talk about jobs that I've had in the past with other people who are at my same level. I've done it on this show, like.
I mean, yeah, they all talk to each other about like what they're up to. Like if they're working on a project, just like you said, like if you started working at a company with a friend that you had a friend that had worked at that company before, you talk about it eventually, right? But also at the same time, it wouldn't be all you talk about. Like I don't imagine that just like Seth Rogen just goes around and just like talking about, talking about like Pineapple Express. He's like, well, I got nothing else. I've run out of other things to talk about. Nobody wants to talk to me about funny people anymore. So here's one.
Hey, Seth, no one ever wanted to talk to you about funny people, except for us. If you're out there, you can get in touch with Seth Rogen. Put him in touch with the Say Report at the Say Report on Twitter. We'll talk to you about funny people. I'd give him 3 hours to talk about funny people if he wanted to. I'm gonna be honest
why you're
about
acting
it.
like that would be some favor. Like I do think there's a lot of people out there that would be very interested to have a conversation with him about that movie.
Really? I feel like I don't know. That movie just never hit. What are we doing? What are we here? We're talking about people on Mars.
I don't know what you're doing.
I don't know.
To just shit all over Christopher Mintz-Plasse and Seth Rogen, I guess.
That was not the intent. The intent was Christopher Mintz-Plasse. When I heard like, wow, he was on the show, and then I'm like, I guess it kind of makes sense that he'd be the first person voted out, which is also sad because I like him. I think he's a good actor, but I don't know.
What that says to me, that reeks to me of the Big Reach, right? Like this is the same thing. Like when they found out that Ryan Reynolds was in the Korean version of Masked Singer, right? Was like he was one of the earliest ones voted out, and it's probably because like not a talent thing or anything. It's just literally we gotta get Ryan Reynolds out of here. We need him for something.
Okay, stars on Mars. Top cat. Here's we go.
Oh man!
Ariel Winters, Natasha Leggero, Tallulah Willis.
Wait! You can't just like throw the names out there.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So like Ariel Winters, like she's fresh off of like Modern Family. I guess it's not fresh. Like when did Modern Family end?
Modern Family ended like 4 years ago. Let's see. I'll click on her.
Some of those years were COVID time.
Yeah.
But like, and I mean, like, it's definitely still in syndication, so it's not like she's not making money off of it. Still.
It ended in 2020. Wow, I thought that ended a long time ago.
What?
It ended in 2020. Modern Family.
Oh, so it's not even that long.
It's not even like 3 years. Yeah. So fresh works, especially when you consider the everything else of it all.
Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, like, didn't she also do a movie with, not Clint Eastwood, who was the old man? Oh, Burt Reynolds. Didn't she do a Burt Reynolds movie before he passed?
See. She was in Quarry video game. Since doing Modern Family, she has been the voice of Princess Sophia in Elena of Avalor. She played young Kyrie in Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory. She was on the R.L. Stine Story Club podcast series. She appeared in The Quarry. She was in the short film Bully, and then she did a voice in an episode of American Dad. How I Met Your Mother. That was actually a pretty good episode of the show.
Anyway, and then you said Natasha Leggero?
Yeah, so then let me go back to Stars on Mars. The host, by the way, is William Shatner. So your I've been to space thing.
Okay.
Trick.
This is a very self-aware show. This is not like let's get a bunch of celebrities that we all hate and like put them in a shit situation.
No, these are like
This is like watching Punk'd or like what's the one that Tracy Morgan there hosted for a while? Scare Factor? No, what was the name of that one?
I don't know the name of it. I can look it up. I have the internet in front of me, and we're gonna be mean to the internet soon, and it might be taken away from us.
Yeah, no, but yeah, so those ones that are more like we love and respect these people, we just want to talk to them about something that they're interested in. And if you told me that these were the kinds of people interested in like Mars travel, I would definitely believe that.
I mean, based on the 2 names I've told you so far.
The 3.
Well, he's hosting. He's not a contestant.
Christopher Mintz-Plasse?
Oh, Christopher. That's right. I'm sorry. I forgot that I had mentioned him already.
Right.
Da-da-da-da-da-da. I swear we know what we're doing. I don't know the name of this show with Tracy Morgan. I don't know how to even look for it.
It's just what? I'll find it for you in like 2 seconds.
But yeah, so like that's the other thing. Other people's Tallulah Willis, so Bruce Willis and Demi Moore's child. Scare Tactics. Okay.
Yeah, Tracy Morgan hosted Scare Tactics for a while, which is that one where they like dress people up in werewolf costumes and chase them around like backyards and shit. Yeah. It's one of the lesser offensive reality shows because it's basically just like a prank show. Like that's all it is.
Right. Do I go through the rest of these contestants? I've started it. I don't know. I'm never gonna watch this show. Like I have to say that.
I don't think we need to go through the rest because I don't want to talk about it much longer either. Because what I was literally about to say is, and by the very nature of the fact that there's not like a maliciousness to it, it instantly becomes even less interesting. I like as somebody that wasn't gonna watch it and does not love that kind of shit, like the mean spirited like reality shows that are out there. That is just not my jam. But like, there's something about the innocuous reality shows that just seem even more pointless to me. Let me put it that way.
That's fair. The thing that I do like about it, looking through the list, and I just feel like this should be mentioned. So Lance Armstrong is the contestant. He's a contestant there. and that's the one that one of the people thought was Neil Armstrong. Like they thought that Lance Armstrong had already been to space.
I'm sorry. Lance Armstrong was in the room while this was happening?
Yeah.
This is a very different conversation, Devin. I just thought that they were like asked a question and they kept saying Lance Armstrong when they meant Neil, and they just did that for a whole episode. I didn't realize Lance Armstrong was literally in front of them and they just kept talking to him about the time he went to the moon.
Well, no, they didn't talk about by
You
the
look
story.
real good, by the way, for what would be a 90-year-old.
No, they just were like, "Oh my God, Lance Armstrong!" And then in like the talking head, they did it, and then like to another contestant, they mentioned that like that guy's an actual astronaut, like he's gonna win. He's it's like no, but then the other one I do want to talk about is Marshawn Lynch.
No, we don't move just past that. You started this entire bit by saying how silly it was that everybody seemed to just focus on this, but fuck, of course they did. This person talked to Lance Armstrong for a half an hour's worth of footage thinking he was Neil Armstrong. Yes, that's definitely worth putting on TV.
You know what? You're not wrong. I don't know. I mean, I didn't watch it, but like that was
Sounds like an Eric Andre bit. It sounds like
yes, that's exactly what it is.
like
But I
Steve
don't.
Brule or some shit.
But it feels like something. It also feels like something that might have been manufactured too.
Yes,
because
that's
of the
what I'm
nature.
saying about the whole show,
Yeah.
Dev, is that with this level of celebrity, this level of self-awareness about what they're doing, this is not there's no stakes, like literally no stakes. So some of it probably is scripted, some of it probably isn't. And the point is, it doesn't matter. And that's what I mean by saying that, like, because there's no stakes at all, it's just not interesting. It's just not like there's no hook to it. This is the kind of show that unfortunately will probably get, a season or two, but isn't going to have like the staying power. It'll get like offhandedly mentioned by American Dad in 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where this probably wouldn't be a show if they weren't looking to fill from the writer's strike. I think I have to, like, we were pitched this before, and it's like, we could probably do it on the cheap. But yeah, the last one is Marshawn Lynch and Richard Sherman are in there. I just want to imagine that they beat the shit out of each other in one episode. Like,
oh, man.
I don't know. It's just one of those things. But like, you want to talk about reality TV show as a like side effect of the writer's strike. That is probably going to be the like flag on the summit of what we're going.
I mean, you want to talk about a streaming service protecting their ass from any type of future issues in this regard? Discovery, Max, HBO, all of this. The guy they put in charge is the reality TV king, right? Yeah. Like they've proven even before the strike that they don't give a shit about just like axing successful shows that people seem to be enjoying and watching, right? Like they have completely put themselves in the position where they could do whatever the fuck they want if there's going to be a strike, and they've proven that people aren't going to give up on them, which sucks. But like, there are still tons of people out there still paying for Max even after everything that happened.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be paying for it still, but the fact that it's included with my cable, I know that technically I'm paying on the cable bill, but like, I don't know if I'd keep it if it were a separate subscription that I had to pay on top of everything else. And last thing, streaming wise, Paramount Plus, we talked about how they moved up the premiere of iCarly from the middle of June to the 1st of June. And they've been making huge headway. Like, literally, when I'm listening to the radio or I'm reading the newspaper and they're talking about how not Sam and Freddie, that's my dream, Carly and Freddie are finally dating, like, no, who cares about that? No, people, when there's nothing else on TV. Let's talk about the internet. Let's talk about the negativity on the internet. Where do you want to start?
I mean, it's not even. I mean, it's not even like directed negativity. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's just basically. I think that for a long time, the internet was the Wild West, right? Mm-hmm. And we always knew that, and we've seen that people are trying to get themselves in order. One of the biggest factors of that is when these companies become publicly traded companies and become, for all intents and purposes, like big boy companies, like solid real tangible companies as opposed to these ethereal ideas of just a group of people in a room just kind of doing it, right? And so the second they start selling stock, essentially, is when when shit gets real, right? And because of that, we have seen over the last like 5, 10 years, like a lot of things kind of go to the wayside when they do this shit, right? Like we get like Tumblr and all of that. Like there's just some crazy shit out, past examples out there of this going sideways. You'd think people would have gotten their shit together by now, but fuck me, it's just not happening. I mean, across the board, there's just been, I mean, YouTube has had stuff for years about the ways in which it's reworked contracts and tried to clean its act up and going through and separating out like kids content, but then it turns out that the kids algorithm seems to behave worse than the adult one in terms of like filtering content, like, and then like, just the ways they dick around creators and ads, and now you can end up with a half an hour of ads on a 5 minute video if you're not careful, if the math all works out just the wrong way for you as a viewer. Like that shit's always been, that's been going on for a while with YouTube, and we've talked about that before, and there's not much more to really pick at there. But it was a surprise this week to also then watch Twitch and Reddit shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah. So I know more about the Twitch stuff. I imagine you know more about the Reddit, since I went on Reddit for the first time today in probably 5 years.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah, I mean the Twitch stuff seems pretty straightforward. They're looking at trimming the fat, essentially, and this is not me giving them a pass for the bullshit that they're pulling. This is their goal, is they're going out there to try and find places where they can start shaving off some of the rougher edges, people with content streams that aren't necessarily using them anymore, people that are still pulling viewers but on like old videos. You mentioned something in the letter that you got, something about the idea of substantial activity. Is that what the word, the phrasing that they use?
Contact. Substantial activity. If there's been no substantial activity on your Twitch channel. And
Right.
that, I mean, I know exactly where that's coming from. They have turned Twitch into a place, and this is over like so November of, maybe it was 2021. Yeah, it had to have been 2021. They introduced a new ad program that was going to be crazy lucrative for the streamer. The streamer could make incredible amounts of money if they like played by these new ad rules. And it wasn't anything like insane. It was for every hour streaming, you have to do like 3 minutes of ads. Like it wasn't even like anything like too off the bean in terms of, well, that's something that's easy for me to do. But
Right.
what they did with that is that if you enrolled in it, at the end of every month, you were given your new requirement, and based upon the number of hours that you streamed, how many ads you had to play. And then, like, so it came down to, for these people, as those goals and numbers were shooting up, you essentially would have to be streaming 24 hours a day in order to incorporate all of the ads that Twitch is requesting of you to still get into this program. And a lot of people were like, well, I can do that, but they're not going to be live, them sitting there for 24 hours a day. People developed ways to keep their channel going without them there creating live content. And
Right.
through 2022, that is basically what Twitch became. A bunch of always on streamers, but like 75% of their content was either videos that they had made in the past, YouTube videos that they might not necessarily even own, but just like a YouTube playlist that they put together, and it fits within the guidelines of like, this is an embedded video, so like I'm
And to
not
be clear,
breaking.
like there were worse offenders that were just doing it with whatever just to get their channel going.
Yeah.
But generally, Twitch creators were trying to gear the content in some way to their brand, right? Like, so it wasn't just a random playlist necessarily, but if they were like an old school SNES player, they would put up a playlist of videos on YouTube of old school SNES shit.
Yeah.
Commercials or playthroughs. Like they formulated a 24-hour channel that fit them, so that if no matter when you went, you were still getting the sense of their shit, right? Because one of the big things to remember about a lot of these creators is that their identity, their personality, not their real one, not their human being out in their, meat space, but like this idea that who they are online, that is, they they don't want to sacrifice that they don't want to, I mean, it's a form of selling out, right? They don't want to just like put a bunch of shit up there just to get it. Now, that being said, as I mentioned, there were people that were just putting whatever the fuck up there just so that their channel could be on. But the best ones were trying to gear themselves towards still keeping it under the same tent, right?
Yeah. And but I understand why if I'm Twitch, right? And all of these 24-hour on streams, right? Like that's server space. And then, like, the advertising you're getting, just because they're on 24 hours, right? And they're showing the ads that you are, at 3 a.m., like, there might be one or no one watching their channel. But you're still, you're still stuck with the bill for that.
It's a hard argument to make, though, because one thing to keep in mind is this isn't just, like, guys, like, pushing locally,
right?
Like this is world
it's international,
so like 3 a.m. here is still like a reasonable time to be watching Twitch somewhere else in the world, and there are a lot of Twitch people out there that have across the world fan bases. So like that becomes a really sticky argument for me, because like you can't say that when it is literally playing at all times everywhere.
Okay, but 3 a.m. in Australia, say, right? Just to pick it there. Like, there might not be the content that's happening here. It's 1 a.m. like on the East Coast. So there might not be, well, that's 3 p.m. Sorry. 3 a.m. in Australia, it's 1 p.m. here. So like, you're not going to get a lot of people in Australia who are watching what might be a prime time to be streaming if you're on the East Coast. Or even if you're on the West Coast, right? Like 1 p.m. seems like a good time where you go on and there's going to be a lot of different content. Like, there's a whole part of the world that's, like, asleep at that time. Who's not going to be turning in.
No matter what.
That's true, no matter... I understand.
No matter what, there is always going to be an audience. And here's the thing. You're saying things that sound very USA-centric right now. The largest base for all of this isn't us.
Oh, I know that.
It's Asia. Yeah. Right, like, and Asia is huge and covers multiple time zones in a way that this idea that like you're
okay, but so 3 a.m. in the United States, right?
Yeah.
3 a.m. in the United States. We're talking across the board, right? So 3 a.m. on the East Coast, that goes all the way to 12 a.m. over on the West Coast. We're talking just the contiguous United States, the lower 48, right? At 3 a.m. in the United States, the amount of like live content that's being produced for Asia is probably at its lowest. That's
I don't know, man, because there's a ton of Asian streamers and stuff too, and there's a ton of streamers that
But I'm talking from the US. I'm talking specifically from the US, right? So there's not people in the US who are going to be watching that content that's being created in Asia at that time. And if you're an Asian person who's interested in watching stuff in the US, there's nothing being created. Like, there are those moments that happen, and those moments are like, they're not being monetized the way that they used to be if you also have an always on stream going. And if all of your big guys are doing always on streams, like it becomes a bit of a money sink in some way. Like, I'm just saying, I think that's where this decision comes from.
No, I think Twitch realized that they fucked themselves, because they put out all of these rules, and they didn't think about the thing that tech companies never think about, is that for every rule you put out there are billions of people in this world that are going to try and break it. And guess what? When that many monkeys are at that many typewriters, they're going to figure it out. And so what it is a loophole was there. And like, it's their own fault. I'm not going to point to streamers like taking advantage of anything. Like, they would put all these rules in place, people obeyed those rules, and they realized that they forgot about shit like the idea the internet is accessible to the entire world, and that people can do shit like put up playlists and all this stuff that they allow. Like, Twitch wrote themselves into a fucking corner and realized how bad they fucked up because they didn't put any limits to this shit.
Right. And then the other thing, like, the big thing when it was first announced was that, like, you can't have burn-in ads. You can't have banner ads. While you're streaming, you can't be advertising the only ads that are supposed to happen are any sponsored content. So if you go through Twitch to get sponsored content through them, that's allowed. However, whatever the guidelines are, or also the ads that Twitch themselves run. So like really Twitch wanted to make sure that you weren't getting any money that they didn't touch first. Because a lot of those people who are 24 hours always on streaming, like in addition to the playlist and the other stuff, they'd have like banner ads for like their own merch, or they'd get, you know, sponsorship deals with people who are like, yeah, no, if I go to this channel and I see that like, oh, Red Bull, maybe I'll buy some Red Bull while I'm here, right? Watching this. It was
and what really gets really gross about that is that like a lot of these guys do things like clothing companies, right?
Mhm.
Are they considering it an ad if if this streamer that I'm watching is wearing a hat that has his brand on it? If I'm watching a streamer and she has a hoodie on that has her brand on it, it's literally just clothes that they're just putting on that day, and probably clothes that they've got in abundance because it's their shit, right? So they probably have like boxes of t-shirts in their garage they're trying to sell anyway, so the odds are they're going to wear one day. Is Twitch going to then hit them and say, hey, you're advertising shit you're not supposed to, when they're literally just wearing, like, at what point are they going to say like you can't wear branded clothing across the board?
Yeah, like it's a slippery slope in terms of what they can and do. Because in terms of that type of things, say you have a sponsorship from Red Bull, you can have like a Red Bull fridge in the background, so that like Red Bull's still getting their ad time, but you're front and center. You can like wear the clothing of it. But eventually, if those people are still making money that Twitch is not privy to, right? Because they're only getting your partner dollars from subscriptions or bits or things like that. Like they could change it, and they already walked back because like their reach the first day when they sent out the letter to me, and I'm just an affiliate. I don't make any money on Twitch. I don't do it enough, and I don't have the fan base to like make any substantial sort of money on Twitch. That's just the fact of it. But because I was able to make it to affiliate when I was streaming like back in 2018, all the Zelda stuff that I was doing, I signed up for it because it's like maybe if I could make a little money on the side. And then I saw that like no, it would have to be a job, and I don't really want to do that. That's not where I want to be with this. So like it's not everybody, but because I was an affiliate, I still got this letter talking about it. And their original overreach was almost to the point that you're talking, where you can't wear branded clothing. You can't have this stuff. So like they've walked that
I think
back.
about like a Twitch streamer that I watch pretty regularly, right? The dude's name is Lord Minion 777. Like he's this older guy from like the Ohio area that I've been watching for just a decade now, and like one of the running bits that he has always had is that he gets like food delivery from his girlfriend while he's like playing, and like people on stream like playing with him and his chat and stuff will give him shit about like eating on stream, and because like supposedly that's like a faux pas and stuff like that, but it's become such a bit for him now that it's like part of the whole thing. And then that inevitably leads to somebody being like, what did you order tonight, Wade? And he's just like, oh, it's Chick-fil-A. Or like, is he gonna get slammed because he like opens like a Red Bull on screen and takes a sip? And somebody says like, oh, did you like rip it? Like, what are you doing over there, man? Grip it and rip it. Like, and he's just like, no, I'm just drinking Red Bull, calm down. Like, is he gonna get hit for that?
Is he sponsored? Like, does he make it known that he's sponsored by Red Bull, or is he just doing it? Because like that's the thing. Like,
I mean, like I don't know, because I also am not privy to these guys like business interactions.
Exactly.
Because a lot of these guys will have like a Red Bull fridge and a bunch of Red Bull in it because Red Bull gave them a present or is paying them or something. And like I'm just, at what point, and because I think about things like the YouTube algorithm, right? Because there are going to be people out there that are honest and fair and all that, and they're going to say, I am sponsored by Red Bull, and so I'm not going to talk about them often on the air. Blam, blam, blam. There's going to be people that aren't sponsored by Red Bull, but just happen to own that shit, just because of over the years of being on the presence on the internet, they've just accumulated a bunch of silly ass like merch and swag from places, right? And like, In between are the problem people, the ones that don't admit that they're being sponsored, act like they just got it. And we know that this happens. We see this especially on like Instagram, right? Where people are not very clear about when they're being paid to talk about a thing and when they're just celebrating a thing. And like that led to a lot of legislation, like literal legal legislation about people having to disclose when they have a sponsor and all of that, right? And it feels like these moves by a company like Twitch are to try and get that group of people, but they're inevitably also going to catch people from other ends. They're going to catch the people that have nothing to do with it. They're going to catch the people that are trying to play by the rules. They're just all they're doing is putting rules in place to catch a small amount of people in the middle that is also just going to end up affecting everybody trying to do the right thing too. And that's it's not fun anymore, right? Like it's starting to really suck the fun out of doing things like streaming on Twitch.
Yeah. Well, I think the growth, and so they made a bunch of money in the pandemic. Like, that's an undeniable thing. Not only were there more people who were streaming because they were stuck at home and like they're like, this is a thing that I could do while I'm stuck at home and I see all these other people do it. So you had this boom of new people who were streaming, and then you had this boom of revenue for Twitch. Twitch made a bunch of money. The internet as a whole made a bunch of money because of the just captured nature that we had. Like,
right, which is honestly what emboldened a bunch of these guys to try and really make a go at making these, again, publicly traded, specifically companies. Like the what happened over the last few years is what emboldened all of these companies to finally put their streaming service out. It's what emboldened all these companies to try and finally clean up their act so that they could do things like go public with their stock and stuff like that. Like it's what I mean. Look at what happened to Twitter, because I mean, like, and you could really point to a lot of what was going on during the pandemic being the thing that really created the fractures necessary for a guy like Elon Musk to get his hands in there and rip it apart. Right, like, and all of this is because of the ways in which tech companies and online companies specifically blew up at a time when they were kind of the only companies we could interact with. And then they're realizing they're going to lose some of that momentum, and this is them clawing to hold on to whatever they can.
Yeah, I mean, not just realizing they're going to lose it. Some of them already have, right? Like with what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, right?
Yeah.
The money, the like living fat off the hog that was happening in the pandemic for these tech companies, like, has already started to come to an end. So also what's happening at Twitch feels very reactionary to the fact that, like, we are not making the same money we used to be making. How can we make it so that it's more profitable for us? What changes do we have to enact so that we're seeing the type of earnings we were seeing during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, that's when you start to look at stuff like what's going on over at Reddit and like the big move this week specifically in starting to demolish the ability for third party apps to be in the picture. Basically, Reddit is making a big move in the coming weeks to shift the entire user base of Reddit just through them. If you're on the phone, they want you to use their mobile app. If you're online, you can feel free to go to the website, but that way every user is going through them, as opposed to going through these middlemen that for some reason or another, Reddit felt they were not getting their due from that. Right. And it's all because I'm sure during the pandemic, they were probably making gangbusters. They announced at the beginning of this year that they were going to try and create an IPO, like they were going to go public with their stock. And then within a few months, they were like, by the way, like, here's a bunch of rule sets for third party apps that none of you can reasonably reach. So guess what? You'll just have to close down. And then, like, that means now everybody's going to go directly through them. So they can do things like get ad money off of them. They can get view money off of them, all of that shit.
Yeah, and the really crazy thing about that, right? So the third-party app, they're making money probably through ad shares and stuff with their app, right?
Some were and some weren't. There are definitely some that so the big thing about that is that Reddit on their end, and this is an important factor in this, never built into their API the way that Reddit a website can talk to other things, right? That's like dumbing it down immensely, but that's the best way to think about it in this situation. Reddit never gave that the ability to push the ads on Reddit. They didn't build that in. That's not something some third party can ever do. They can ask Reddit, like, hey, can you fix your API so that you're also pushing your ads so that we don't have to be the ones to pay for your shit? Reddit never did that. So third-party apps may not have had ads on them because they weren't getting pushed the ability to show any Reddit ads. And if they weren't trying to make any money off of them, there's plenty of examples out there of Reddit apps currently that are free and don't have anything. They may not be the best quality. You may not be able to watch video or look at images. Like there's all sorts of weird caveats to that, but you can do an ad-free Reddit experience if you want. Some third-party apps, what they did is because they're built with like Google like basics to them, they could put ads in of their own from Google and then get some money from Google for putting ads on their app, just like any app that you download. But like those two are not the same, right? Like, and so Reddit tried to use in a lot of this writing the excuse that they were not getting things like ad revenue off of these third party apps. And then the third party apps were right to quickly point out, well, it's not that we didn't want to. Like literally, we have emails of conversations about like, are you going to do this? And you just saying that it was too complicated. So like so to that point, like Reddit by their own admission was not letting that happen.
Yeah, so my thought was that as soon as there could be 100 apps, right, that just allow you to access Reddit, and if none of them is all just a free experience, I didn't like how Reddit was, so I created the way so that I could read it better, and then a couple of my friends like it, so I figured, hey, I'll put it on the App Store for free, and I can share this experience with it, right? You have 99 people who, like, that's the reason why they created their third-party app. When you have that one person who starts to make that ad money through the Google, and then the bigger company sees that there's money being made off of their work that like they're not privy to, that's when you start to attack and try to tear this stuff down.
So
like,
I don't think it's about ad money again, because like Reddit was specifically approached about fixing that, and by their own choice for years has not, right? The bigger thing is that they accused these apps of what's called scraping. So essentially, somebody creates an app that talks to Reddit, right? It doesn't even necessarily have to be one that they sell. It doesn't even necessarily have to be one that they
is made
allow
public.
to access Reddit.
Yeah.
It's just basically they create an app that can exist even just on their own computer that constantly reaches out to Reddit to look for information, and then they package that information and they'll sell it to interested buyers. Scraping is a huge issue in the tech world right now, and they accused a bunch of third-party apps of doing that. Even upwards of I think 2 months ago, they put a whole post up of the top 10 worst offenders of people doing what's called an API call, so somebody reaching out to Reddit to ask for information, and they were pointing to some people. They didn't name anybody. They put a chart up literally with like company A, company B, company C, company D. Like that's all they put up. And then they put a chart above that that said company A reaches out to Reddit like 864,000 times in a day to ask for information. That's insane. Just by comparison, the more popular actual available Reddit reader app that's called Apollo, which is kind of the bigger player, another big player in this whole story, they posted that they were reaching out, I think somewhere between 12,000 to 36,000 times a day. Like they were hitting thousands, but they weren't hitting hundreds of thousands. And like this thing was like going fucking bananas, whatever company they were pointing at, right? And so they were claiming that this is evidence of scraping because this is reaching out. They're not asking questions at a rate that a human clicking buttons on a screen would need it. So this means this is a bot, like reaching out and asking for this information. And when they get that information, we don't know what they're doing with it once they get it, right? And by having an open API like they've got so that people can create this kind of shit, like it's a security concern and all that. So they start by talking about that. But then what they do is they put a bunch of rules in place and monetary constraints in place that affect not just people doing that, but even the most basic of users that just want to access the website. It's the most fucked up thing. Because it's exactly what I was talking about, is that they use this small subset of the community that is misbehaving as an excuse to then enact a bunch of shit that just affects everybody. And it's so clearly like this malicious move on everyone, but then they get to act like they're doing it about this one specific thing. But luckily what's happened in the Reddit case is that so many of these third-party app creators have come out with receipts, like literal like recordings of phone messages and like and emails that they've gotten from Reddit over the years and all of this shit proving that like this is stuff that they have all been trying to talk about with them and fix with them, and just nobody at Reddit has cared to fix any of this, and now suddenly they're using it to kill everything.
Jeez, that's Okay, yeah, no, that's, I mean, money is where I'm always going to follow, but then there is still money there in some way, right? Because any scraped information is probably being packaged and sold, but
Yeah.
that is like, as I kind of went like sticker shock when you said 864,000 like access moments in a
Well,
day.
what's
That's
crazy
yeah,
about
like,
that is like that's even so Reddit has a limit on the amount of times that an app can reach out to it to ask for information. And I think it's per user, I think it's 60 calls per minute. So that's one per second,
mhm.
right? And that's insane. Nobody out there is tapping through their phone and doing 60 different things for a minute every minute for a while for enough for that to be an effect, right? Somebody would have to just be just like click 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 click. It's just it's and that was Reddit's own limit. So when people were creating third-party apps, they were limiting calls to how often they reached out to Reddit to do this. And Apollo specifically has a lot of really good breakdown on this stuff. If you like, there's a ton of good write-ups as well as a YouTube video uh, about with the creator of Apollo breaking all of this down. And he said that he was hitting probably, I think it was 36,500 calls was like tops for them, right? And then Reddit pointed to a different app and said, well, they're only making 10,000 calls. And he's like, I didn't realize that I didn't realize that I was trying to compare myself to this other app. I was comparing myself to your standards of 60 calls a minute all day, which is like so and I'm not doing anywhere near that. Like that is where you start to get into the hundreds of thousands of calls when you start to talk about that. Like it's he's like I if I had known that you wanted me to limit this stuff, I would have. And he said also on top of that, like I already do some pretty efficient shit and like laid down all of this stuff that he does that he's like, this is better than your website. Your website that does like 12 times the amount of work that my app does to access your website. So like I'm more efficient than you. Which was like his thing, and he like put the entire source code up for everybody to look at, and they were like, "Yup, this is."
I I wish I understood. Actually, I'm pretty happy with how I understand Reddit. I really have never used it in any way, shape, or form. But the way that it is, this obsession of a lot of people who are on the internet, and that sounds like I'm being judgmental or anything like that. It's just I don't think I personally have the mental bandwidth to do the things on Reddit that I know other people in my life are doing. Does that
I
make
mean, here's
sense?
the thing:
Like,
is Reddit isn't a thing, right?
yeah.
Reddit is a window into a different world, and so when people are addicted to Reddit, like, and that is definitely something that is out there, and there's a lot of conversation, especially right now, with the idea that a lot of people's access to it might be going away. Like this is definitely a problem, right? But the important thing to remember is that when everybody's experience on a website like that is going to be different because essentially it's just an aggregate of different forums. It's so like 20 years ago, you would go to a specific website to talk about your sewing hobby. Now, you don't have to do that. You can go to one website and talk about your sewing hobby, your fishing hobby, your video game hobby, and all that all in one. That's Reddit. So when people are on Reddit all day and doing this, like all this shit, like there really isn't anything to get. Like it's think about the conversations you and I have here on this show. People are just doing this. They're just doing this in a text format on this website. That's all that they're doing. And sometimes they're ducking in and out. I mean, we see it with Discord servers now. So many people just join servers and like sometimes they hang out in them, sometimes they're not around, sometimes they mute them, sometimes they're active in them. But like the idea that they just have consistent access to a community of people talking about a thing that they like to talk about can be super addictive because there's never a time where your brain goes, I want to talk about this thing with somebody, and you don't have the ability to say, oh, nobody's around right now. No, there is always somebody around, right? And that habit can get really dangerous if you're not careful, depending on what you're talking about, how you're talking about it, like that kind of stuff out there. And so Reddit is this weird like concept of just like rather than there being a billion websites about a billion different things, why don't we have one website that can just house a billion different ideas, a billion different conversations? And that's beautiful and great. But then like it became this beast of like, we also need you to like or we want you to pay money for a premium service where you get better I don't know like does pages load faster like I don't know like you get Reddit Gold which is just fucking just basically NFTs that they've been selling for years but they'll also Reddit will be the first ones to come out and say like we don't really want to allow NFTs to get sold on our website and it's like you literally sell one you sell a non-fungible token in Reddit Gold like that is exactly what that is there's all sorts of like there's all sorts of stuff about the oeuvre of the website Reddit that when you really try and break it down and try and figure out why are people so obsessed with this thing, because it's not a thing, it's everything.
The way that you described it, of I want to talk about this thing right now and there's nobody to talk about, that totally made me understand what Reddit is, and that I have made the right decision to not go down that rabbit hole. Because
it's really unhealthy for a lot of people,
Yeah.
myself included. Like
Yeah.
I've definitely found myself in moments where I'm like, I need to get off of this website, because there's a lot of people talking about like the daily events, and I like that. I like having an ability to know kind of at a moment's notice what's going on in the news, because we don't watch the news anymore, and I don't read newspapers, and and even if I did, I don't have immediate access to one all the time. But this is a consistently updating news source for me, and that turns out is really bad for my mental health.
Yeah, I mean that's what Twitter is for me now, and Twitter is not great. I'll admit that. But the way that like if I have a spare second, I hit Twitter, like that's scary to me. So what Reddit sounds like is like an even deeper thing. But the fact that like one of the main reasons why I sleep, like one of the reasons why I will go to bed, is because I have this thing that I want to think about or talk about or engage with. But then like, there's nobody to do it. That must mean that it's late. I should probably go to sleep. Right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
if in between my thought of like, man, I would really, really like to delve into the Maniac Mansion TV show with somebody like that. I would love to do that right now. And then there being nobody to do that with, so I go to bed. If there was an intercept point where I could go to Reddit and start having discussions about the Maniac Mansion television series, I wouldn't sleep. I would I would just keep doing that.
Yeah, and just like there's not too much more to say about this. Like you really should look up the stuff specifically with the guy from Apollo, because
that sounds interesting.
He has been phenomenal. His name is Christian Seelig. He's done a couple of different interviews and stuff about it now, and did a full write up himself on Reddit. Like I'm curious to know if it's actually still there. But he really laid out a bunch of really interesting stuff that happened to him. But in addition to that, he lives in Canada, so as a one-party country, he recorded everything. Reddit didn't know that, and they didn't have to, because he lives in Canada, so he recorded everything that he's been getting into over the last 6 months. He kept all the emails, so he just started posting. Like I said, like he had the receipts for everything. So he's a really interesting one to look into. Not the only person affected by this shit, and that's always kind of the dangerous thing when you become the face of this stuff, is that like people really start to equate everything with you, and so like there's worse stuff happening to other people and all of that. But he has done a really good job of documenting it. So I encourage you guys to look that stuff up. Christian Seelig of Apollo. It's really, really interesting shit. Because like it really does prove that Reddit wanted to make a specific move, and they used this really shitty excuse to do it. And like it sucks, because I think that a lot of people kind of saw the writing on the wall earlier this year when they announced that they wanted to go publicly traded and all that. People were just like, well, here we go. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to get rid of all the porn. Then the next thing they're going to do is they're going to get, they're going to pump it full of ads. They're going to start making users pay for it, that in ways that they already kind of are. Like it's inevitable. And so, but you said something interesting about the idea that like Reddit seems like a deeper hole than Twitter. And while Twitter has its own audience, so the audience for Twitter and Reddit are not necessarily one-to-one, there is definitely overlap. There is a Venn diagram. And one of the easiest things to do on Reddit is to be posting screenshots of tweets. So like basically, I do still get Twitter on the regular, which is something I had not really thought about before. But in all of my efforts to quit Twitter, part of the reason that was so easy for me to do is that as somebody that was frequenting a site like Reddit, I was still basically on Twitter. I just wasn't interacting with it in the ways that I would be on a Twitter app. But like that I wasn't really interacting to before. So like it's pretty much one-to-one for me.
Well, I mean, one of the crazy things on Twitter, and this is like the thread readers, where if someone does like 56 tweets, you can request to have it put off into like a thread so it can be read separately. And I used to think those were great until I realized that is literally stealing someone else's work that they put on Twitter. And then a lot of the thread readers, they have ad monetization on the site. So then like this person who put out those 56 tweets, if you start doing the thread reader and you start sharing that link every time that they click it, that website is making money off of that person's work in a way that, like, Twitter, the way that it's mostly ad free. And I say that because, like, now that Elon's in charge, the ads have become a lot more frequent on the site. Like, the ads used to be, you know, I am Dunkin' Donuts and I am tweeting something and you are seeing it, as opposed to actual sold ad space in my timeline of Twitter, like the for you and the following stuff. And I don't even want to go into it. I don't want to go into it. But, like, that's an interesting thing, like the screenshots on Reddit. It doesn't bother me until I realize, like, Reddit to me is such a crazy thing. And the reason why I don't know anything about it is in 2012, I visited some friends in Northampton, Massachusetts, and I was talking about things that, like, I had just picked up through the world. And the response from the two people I was hanging out with was like, oh yeah, I saw something about that on Reddit. Like, everything that I brought up, that was their response. And I think, like, you know, brightly colored frogs, we're not supposed to touch them. Because in our animal hindbrains, we're told that, like, that means it's dangerous. The way that every single topic I brought up, their response was, oh, I saw something about that on Reddit. My, like, instincts went on defense as, like, whatever this Reddit thing is, like, makes life a little less interesting.
Well, and you know, there's all sorts of shit to be said, because, like, when people talk about building bubbles, like, Reddit is a almost a 1-for-1. Like, you can put walls up around your shit. And you know, this is not me being like, you should be open to listening to everybody. No, there are tons of assholes in the world, and you should be able to block them out of your life if they are unhealthy for you, if they are unsafe, if they are saying things that make you, you know, like, feel like like you're in danger. You shouldn't have to put up with that, right? But that being said, you know, you do then form in these situations when you do that time and time and time and time and time again. Suddenly you look around and you realize that, like, you've got no windows, you've got no doors, you've put yourself in this, like, this really dark situation, right? And that's where I found myself. And, like, and so the, you know, the next question is obviously, well, how do you block out the bad while not creating this bubble around you that doesn't allow you to get new information to learn and grow, right? And my answer to that is, I don't know, but the answer's not on Reddit. Like I realized that, like, forming a safety bubble on that website so that I was only getting the kind of information I wanted to hear was great and uplifting at times, but then I slowly started to realize that a lot of the stuff that I was getting had a slant to it that I was not able to break in certain situations, and that was really upsetting to me. You know, like a low level example that has no real consequence in the world. A lot of the reactions to stuff like Marvel movies coming out, and how I was feeling very weird about situations because I would go to a movie and enjoy it and then find out that a quote unquote a bunch of people didn't like it, right? And you know, maybe this was bearing true in things like Rotten Tomato scores and stuff as well, right? But that's what a site like Reddit was shoving down my throat about those things, is because this certain vocal minority, this is a certain vocal minority of people in the world are against this thing, then you are the one that is alone and for feeling different. That sucks, because I was purposely building those walls so that I wouldn't feel that way, and now here I was in my safety space and feeling that way. That then now it must be true, right? Like, it becomes this really weird place. Like, and so, and like I said, like, you could think all you want about the ways that you could still interact with the world in this safe way, but one of the easiest things for me to do is to just leave. like right, like, it's just, I just need to go.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that moment where every topic, like, I'm hanging out with people, right? We're in the real world having a conversation. I'm bringing up things that I thought were interesting that I heard, and then when they say, I saw something about that on Reddit, that was like, we're not going to talk about that. That's what that code was. Is like, we're not going to have a conversation about that topic because I've already seen it on Reddit.
Well,
And
what it is an admission that I don't have my own opinion about that. I only know this one thing, and for all I know, I'm missing source, or I didn't care for the source or whatever. So, like, that, like, it it's beyond a I don't want to talk about this anymore. It is literally I cannot talk about this thing. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, that's weird. If you're interested in it, why do you feel like you're in a position to not be able to talk about it? But I'll tell you what, I feel like that a lot after getting off of Reddit. I feel like topics like Tears of the Kingdom, a game that I am so fucking deep in right now. I like I'm going to end this recording and go right back to my game that is paused 10 feet away. Like I can't talk to anybody on Reddit about it because like I end up feeling like really weird and gross, and I don't want to layer that onto a thing I love. So
I'm happy to hear you say that. I'm gonna use this as our like ripcord out of this conversation before we get any like deeper into the dregs of it. I also feel really weird about my opinions on Tears of the Kingdom and unable to discuss them. And I don't want to talk about them here. I want us to both finish the game before we have a conversation about it. And I understand that that could mean that we're not having a conversation like the type of conversation I want to have about Zelda Tears of the Kingdom until maybe 2025, if
yeah,
depending on what the thing of finish it is. But here's a little thing that I did this week. I was going to be hanging out with the person that the day after Tears of the Kingdom released, I hung out with a friend and I watched him play the intro of the game. By the intro of the game, for anyone who's played it, he got off of the Great Sky Island, right? Like that's as far as I watched him go. And it was fun watching him do it. And it was interesting to me to have firsthand experience with how somebody else approached that game. Like I really enjoyed it because I had the release date off. I got off of the Sky Island and I'm like, I'm going to watch him play the game until he catches up with where I am. I won't feel like too, oh my God, spoilers in this situation, right?
right.
So then when it came time for us we were going to see each other again, I hung out with him yesterday. I'm like, okay, so I feel like I need to do some substantial stuff in this game. So I aggregated all of the conversations I've been having with people, including you, Sejin, about what they've completed in the game. And what I came down to for me is I really need to go do some of these temples. The temples need to be the thing that I focus on. Because you at the time had completed 2. He had mentioned completing 2. And I had a third like 2 other people who had like completed 2 temples. But everybody that I had talked to had completed separate temples. So because I'm Devin Decker and because I basically set my mind up to like, these are the goals, I said on Monday morning, I'm going to be a temple a day this week. That's the thing that I did. So that I completed all 4 temples. All the regional phenomena are completed. But then when I go to hang out with him, he's like, oh yeah, I've only done the Rito temple. So like I killed myself to make sure that like I could have a conversation with him that like spoilers would be avoided. I could have a conversation with you on the show where like you could talk freely about your experiences in the water and wind temple. I could talk with my friend Joe about his experiences in the fire and lightning temples. Like it was just so crazy the way that I approached it. And like I had fun doing it. I'm not going to say that it was not fun, but it has really changed my perception of the game in the way that I was sort of nervous about and why I was avoiding temples.
It's very interesting to me how much you care about what other people are doing in this one player game. And I think that that's something that like it's not just you. Like this is something that I've always noticed in the gaming world when people talk about like the ways other people play a game. And like often I mean with like a you know a cynical slant, right? Like and so like people talking about like paying for costumes that they wouldn't, or you know like when we used to talk about like Arkham City and like the fact that I bought like the big package and got like the whole story and I had this like different experience than you, and like you very fairly were like I'm not going to pay for like they should have given me the full game when I bought the game, right? Like it is one of the most egregious examples of that, right? But like you've never given me shit for the way that I played it, and I've never tried to give you shit for the way that you played it. I've just always pointed out when you talk about missing A, B, or C that unfortunately it's because it was part of some add-on content, right? And like that kind of thing. There's just the ways in which people seem to obsess about the ways other people play a one-player game just always is really interesting to me because like I don't know if it's multiplayer and like what they're doing is affecting the thing that you're doing, totally get why you would really latch on to that because like it is changing your experience because they are making these decisions for better or for worse, very often for worse. It's why I don't play a lot of multiplayer games. I just can't do it anymore. You know, like Apex, I always kind of dip into for like a week and I have really fun at first, but then after a while I realize more often than not I'm getting stuck with people that don't stick around with me, that don't care about what I'm doing, don't give me weapons. Like when they find if they've got like a level 3 weapon and I've got a level 1, if they find a level 3 weapon that they like better, they won't tell me so that we both have level 3 weapons. They'll take the weapon they want. It's just like fuck off. Like I need help here. Like we're on a team, like that kind of stuff. Like so I don't do that very often. So yeah, I don't know, man, because like I have played another temple since then, so I've played 3 temples now. I have put I think the number on my thing is like 60 over 60 hours. Like it doesn't give you like an exact amount, right? It says you have played over this number of hours, and I think it's 60 currently.
I don't have that
like,
number, but I will
sorry.
look at I will look at it after this. I will send it to you, and then we will start off next week's episode with how many hours I had before I just gave my little rant about Tears of the Kingdom. Continue,
Yeah,
sorry.
but so like you went out of your way to go and do all of these temples and in your words kill yourself to get this done because other people were doing it, but like why?
So the
Why
reason
didn't
why
you just keep playing the game you wanted to play? Like you seem to be having so much fun when you were just doing what you wanted in it. Why did you force yourself to do something you didn't want to be doing?
because I didn't want. So the interesting thing is that like it is a single player experience. So my experience is whatever the experience I should have. In a lot of ways, I mean, I didn't kill myself to do it. I do want to say that it ended up having an effect on me, but like setting out that like when I play the game on Monday, I'm going to head towards the Goron City and complete whatever the regional problem is there. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to head there. And it wasn't one of these things where like if I got frustrated, I kept it going. I have to bash my head against this. If I felt fatigue coming in, then I would go to bed. Like I'd be like, all right, like I'm a little bit too frustrated right now, or I'm getting tired anyway. Like let's do it. The fact of the matter when I say that I did a day is that by Friday morning, I had completed all of the temples. And what it did for me about the game was in completing in that way, like I don't really want to talk about it, but I saw what I determine as like sort of a weakness to the narrative structure of the game, to the fact that it is an open world environment. And that's all I'm going to say there. I don't want to go like any deeper on that at this time. But
Have you done any of the Dragon Tears?
I've done all of them.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, to me, that's the narrative. And
That
was, like, the first thing
and
I
that
did.
is
So like,
and let
I
me tell
also
you, it healed up some of the issue that I had. Was like, oh well, this is where the money went. Was this part of the game? But like it didn't change the fact that completing the temples like one after another, I noticed some, let's say, consistencies in the style of the reward for completing a temple. Does that make sense? Like with
are
me,
you
like
talking about the powers that you get?
no. I'm talking about. I'm gonna just say it, and come for
Yeah,
me
just
if
say
you
it.
want to.
Yeah.
Is the fact that like every time you beat a temple, when the future sage, spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom, if you don't want to hear this, then like vacate for like 10 minutes. The story that the sage is told is the exact same story. It is the exact same visuals that are used. And it's by the very nature of the fact that from the start of the game, any of them could be your first temple. And it just like, by the time it was the third time that I was hearing the story, just told to me in a different voice, but with the same visuals, and then the sage reacted with, that was the imprisoning war. I'm just like, this is weird. It just felt so weird to me because like
Oh, I disagree. My favorite thing is how different all of the different races react to their responsibilities, which honestly is a carryover from Breath of the Wild. You know, like in the Rito are much more proud. The Gorons are a little bit more hesitant. The Gerudos are right there with Zelda. They fucking like they feel responsible because of what's happened. And then like the subtlety in the ways in which the different sages and the different races, like there's this part in the fire one where there's a moment where I thought he wasn't going to accept the responsibility, or there was going to be some like major hesitation on the Little Rock's like whole like thing like I that stuff is where I think this is the best written Zelda game I've ever played.
Yeah, it felt it felt lazy that, and that's
It's
a
so
weird,
huge thing to level
that's a
against this game,
weird
man.
fucking thing
Wow.
to say.
Wow.
It felt like, okay, so that's the thing. So the game took all this time to do and all that, and now I've done the Dragon Tears, and the Dragon Tears, like, that was a very compelling thing. Like, I just was like, I'm not really sure where to go next. I found this map of where they are. I'll kill some time doing it, and then after doing two of them, I'm like, well, I need to go do all of these now, because I'm very invested in what this narrative is. I'm excited to see how this like pairs out. But then like that feels like time was put into this, but that thing, and I know it's subtlety. Like I know that like there's little changes to it is, but and I know it's not going to happen, right? It's the same
Like,
issue that I
yeah,
had with
like and like the difference between Tulin taking on the responsibility versus in the first one where you're where what's the Rito guy's name, and he's
Rivoli.
such a jerk. Yeah, Rivali, right. And so like Rivali has this whole like attitude about him where he feels he's better than Link and doesn't understand why they all need him, whereas like Tulin is like so excited to be able to help out Link, and like this whole, and that's because part of it is because you've met Tulin before in other games and stuff, and that's really cool. But like this, but there's this whole like attitude shift, but it's still but what's really cool about it for me is that they both still come from the same place, this overconfidence of the Rito people that they can definitely, you know, help you. And like for Rivali, it manifests itself in him with like kind of like hating Link at first, and then learning to become friends with him by the end of everything that happens in that story. And then like for Tulin, that just that overconfidence being him running off on his own, like that him getting ahead of you, him developing this power that nobody else in his has. Like there's just so much going on there just between those two games, and then add to that like his Tulin's reaction to becoming a sage compared to the other people that you meet in that situation. And I was just like, that's the shit that brings a smile to my face. That is Nintendo like doing something in this game that they don't always have the ability to do in like a Mario game. You know, I love Mario Odyssey, but like to your point about like weird narrative structure, like Mario Odyssey, you can do stuff all over the place in that game and completely out of time and out of sync with stuff. You can run into people in places where you're like, wait, I just jumped through a painting and now you're here, but you were just there. Like, how did you do that? It's like, well, you can't think about that because it's a Mario game, right? Like that, I don't have those moments when I'm playing this. It always, I mean, like I ran into somebody as I was walking down the road today that I was convinced was just going to be a Yiga person in disguise, because every single time I talk to a person on the side of the road, they turn out to be a Yiga jerk, and that's fine. I like getting gems and stuff, so I'll talk to everybody anyway. But ideally, I'd like to get more information about like a shrine or something. Well, I ran into this person, and they were like, hey Link, good to see you again. Thanks for helping me out with those clothing guys and all this stuff. And I'm just like, holy shit, you're somebody that I met in the first like 2 hours of this game, and I'm now running into you again. And I didn't even realize it until you mentioned that. It was like this real slap in the face moment of just like, god damn, man, this game really knows what I'm up to, doesn't it?
Yeah, I haven't felt that way. Like, I'm glad that it puts a smile on your face. Those moments, having to hear the story again, and I'm just like, I know this part. I wish there was more blatant changes. Like, the subtle moments were nice. I noticed them, but I was so busy going blind on the paperwork that I couldn't have fun with it.
Yeah, so why did you keep doing it? That's what I'm saying. Is like you realized that this thing was happening, and your reaction was, I'm gonna just force myself through it, and then I'm gonna have this opinion about this game for the rest of my life now because I put myself in this shit situation that I didn't have to.
Well, because I wanted to complete them. I didn't want them spoiled for me, and it seemed like the time where people were talking about what the challenges of the temples were, and I didn't want to have that taken from me. I wanted to go in and form my own opinion on that.
Yeah. How many people have you talked to then and talked to about the different temples?
Well, I've talked to each of the temples with a different person. My own sages, if it were. Because of the people who started them on their own and then had their discussions about it. Like, it was interesting.
I haven't talked to really anybody about the game because I just like everybody's doing such weird, silly shit in it. The worst part has been needing some information about like different pieces I may be missing of the technology because I'm just like I feel like I should be able to do this, but I don't have it something that does specifically that. And then I find out that like, oh no, there's totally a thing that does that. You just haven't discovered the right gachapon machine to get it yet.
Yeah. I do like that. I like that part of it, even though it is just sort of gotcha. But I have so many cores that it doesn't really bother me to throw them in.
Oh no, I mean like yeah, so, that's the point, right?
Like,
it's not like they're asking you to put a credit card in to use the damn thing.
Right. And I'm still enjoying myself with it. It was just that one moment where I'm like, man, like this, like, and I totally was like, this is how you decided to play it. But at the same time, I didn't want to deviate from that because I'm like, I am in temple mode right now. And like, it's not like I'm rushing to the end of the game, though I did rush back to that end boss area once I completed the 4 temples. And like, combination of learning how to do it when I only had the 4 hearts, plus having the boosts and the boons that came from completing the temples, I really trivialized it until I got to the part where just my shit was stomped. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm still not supposed to be here yet. There's still more that's blocking me from this. And so, like, that was interesting and kind of a cool experience, too. I'm enjoying some of my experiences with it. I'm just finding that this, like, sort of universal love for the game that I'm finding from the people I've discussed it with, I'm not in possession of.
I mean, you didn't like Breath of the Wild either.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that this is a style of game that you. First of all, is there a 3D Zelda that you think is like perfect?
No. In fact, I have developed a theory after playing this game about why 3D Zeldas don't work for me that I'm still like kind of sanding the edges off of, but it all stems from what got the thought popping in my mind is that almost every 3D Zelda is kind of an offshoot of the 3D Collectathon, but like with puzzles. If that makes like a crazy it's
in the 2D ones were collected like there's collecting quests in all of them. Zelda, I mean, you're not wrong, but I think you're not pointing to Zelda suddenly picking up something everybody else was putting down. I think everybody else is just aping Zelda. Some people to a point, to an extreme, right? Like your Spyros and your Banjo-Kazooies, like going to a point of like no, like way beyond what Zelda ever did. But there isn't anything that you do in those games, especially those like first games, that wasn't already done by a game like Link to the Past or like any of the Oracle's games or the Minish Cap. Like there's all sorts of ones where you need to go to like different villages to collect stuff. I mean, I'm thinking about in Link's Awakening, there's that entire like trading quest line where you have to go from village to village and trade stuff, right?
I mean, I do think that like when I talk about why Link to the Past is the one that really works for me, a lot of the collectum stuff is optional. You can still complete the game without doing that stuff. This is part of what does it. And then where Link's Awakening is a game that I enjoy, but then I forget about the fact that like, oh no, you need to be trading the entire time you go through the game because it is tied to being able to finish the game, completing the trading like path line.
Well, if you want to get like the right moves and bits and pieces, right?
Well, I mean, in order to get the magnifying glass that gives you the map to the final boss, you need to do the whole trading line. Like that's just a fact. And I'm like, the way that they do it in speedruns is if you load up,
because I didn't finish the trading quest until after I beat the game and realized I didn't get the seashells for the Master Sword either, so I went back.
Well, the seashells are optional and really made trivial by the color dungeon where you can pick the red tunic and then you have a sword that's stronger than the level 2 sword anyway. If you have on the red tunic. So like that was a weird choice that they made there, but it's the trading minigame where you start with the Yoshi doll. It eventually culminates in you getting the magnifying glass, and you need the magnifying glass to read the book that tells you how to solve the labyrinth inside of the windfish egg.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
The book that's in the library that's written in the yeah.
it's very small. The print is too small to make out. So you could dummy bash your head through that puzzle and figure it out. But it's one of those situations where the game itself, because you need to give the monkeys the bananas in order
Mhm.
to build the bridge at that one point in the game.
Yeah.
Like
Right,
they
right. If you
they
want to be able to get over to the back of that to the
yeah
back of the castle, right?
they gatekeep progress to tell you that this trading mini game is important.
Right.
Like it's not
Right.
just a
Yeah,
side
but
quest.
that's yeah, so that's what I mean. It's like this is stuff that's been in Zelda for decades.
Yes, I
So like I
understand
don't
that.
know, man.
But then what I'm seeing with Ocarina of Time, right, and the expansion from those games to something like Ocarina of Time into the third dimension, there's so many more things that you need to collect. Like the pose and the whole big Goron sword quest. Like there's 3 of those quests. The map, not the masks that you collect that then go on to be what Majora's Mask sort of hangs its hat on. I'm mixing metaphors here. Like,
Yeah, see, so like for me, I always thought about those as an extension of in Link to the Past, the idea that you need to go for the 3 things first, and then the game actually starts, and then you go for the 7, right? That idea that there's like a smaller quest where you need to collect these pieces first, that will then open up to the larger quest, the real meaning of this area, is like that is the Zelda game loop that I crave, and that comes from Link to the Past.
yeah. And I like that one. I really enjoy that one. And that's definitely something that's present in Ocarina of Time, where you have to get the 3 essences from the tree, the Dodongo Cavern, and inside Jabu Jabu. And then you got to find the 6 temples to get the sage medallions. Like that works there. But along the way there's like the Skulltula quest, and there's the magic beans that you need to do. Like we became so obsessed with making sure there was 100 hours of content in games, and even like Ocarina of Time, like it was more like 50 hours of content at that point, that the side stuff just kind of balloons to this level where it becomes like unable to remain fun for somebody who wants to do everything. And
Yeah.
what I
mean,
think
as
about,
somebody that spent 350 hours in Breath of the Wild, though, like
yeah,
that's what I want, you know?
right. And I like different experiences. I like to hear different voices. I approach games like movies in a lot of ways. Like I want to hear what they have to say. And I used to like the completion aspect of it. And here's the thing that I realized this weekend with Tears of the Kingdom, right? I'm probably going to finish Tears of the Kingdom before the end of June. And by that I mean roll credits on the game, right? Complete the final end boss and defeat them. Whether I go back to the game or not, I don't know if that's going to happen. But what I can say with certainty is if Nintendo ever adds a achievement or trophy system to their environment of gaming, I will be out on Nintendo. Because all the stuff that is possible to do in Tears of the Kingdom, I am okay with right now, because there is not some weird list of trophies that is tied to it.
I mean, why will you be out on Nintendo completely? Like, how is that any different than Sony having a game like GTA where you can play 300 hours and get that, or you can get more focused experiences and you just choose not to play GTA? Like, why would all of Nintendo be written off for you just because Tears of the Kingdom is too big for you?
Because I feel like all their games are too big for me now at this point. And I understand the why of that. I don't know. Like, it's where my mind went to. Is Nintendo makes these huge experiences, and I'm at a point in my life with these games where, I'm not interested in it. I still haven't finished Scarlet and Violet, because it gave me the 3 things, and then once I did that, it's like, all right, now we have to do this. And I'm like, I really don't want to do that. Like, I'm done. I'm done with this game.
I mean, it just sounds like you finished the game then, Dev. There's a level at which you could say I finished what I wanted from this thing, and you could just be done with it. Like, I'm curious to know where this overarching feeling is, this gaze is coming from that makes you feel like you have to play games in a certain way. Like,
I think it's just from how I've played games my whole life, and where I've credits are my victory. It's why I watch the credits at the movie theater. It's why
There are
like
literally games where you could just click credits on the opening menu.
right. Well, I want to earn them. I
So,
don't want to just click credits. I want to.
but what does earn them mean? Like, what is the definition of earn, and how did you develop this?
So
Because
the
what
way that
you seem
I've
to think
developed,
earning at the end of a game is completely different than me, or honestly anybody I've ever talked to.
when I complete the objective, that as a result the credits of the game roll. That's when I consider a game completed. And I know that that's not 100%, but like that's where it comes from. Like Super Mario World, beating it by going through the Star World for a long time, I said, I've beaten Super Mario World. And then I came back to it and was like, well, now it's time to beat all the levels.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about Super Mario 3D World? Credits roll on that game like six times.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten all of them, is what I'm going to
Yeah,
say. So,
right. I mean, but like,
but I'm not playing
I
it
don't know.
actively because I earned a credit roll. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's all me. I know it's all like the way that I approach it, but like it like just borderline. There's no thought right now when I buy a Nintendo game. When I buy a game from Nintendo, I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy this game and I'm going to eventually, like 90% of the time, I'm going to complete this game. Like that's what's going to happen. There's no thought now. If achievements were ever to become part of the Nintendo ecosystem, there'd be more thought there.
yeah. I mean, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
As somebody that's never cared about achievements, like I don't think I'd be right there with you. But but I understand why you would feel that way. I like there are tons of people out there that do feel like certain things about achievements and stuff like that, and completions and stuff. For me, like my big thing about a game like this is like I want to get completely powered up. I am super interested in buying every costume. I'm super interested in buying some multiple of costumes so that I can have different colors. Like, but I none of that stuff is going to be enough to make me like push myself if I'm not having fun.
Well, I will pair away from it because like for at one point I'm like I need to find all the costumes, and now I'm like no, I don't need to find the costumes. I found the costume that I like. Well, I found two costumes that I like, but one is infinitely more useful than the other, is what I'm going to say. And yet still I'm powering up the other one because I dyed it Say Report yellow and it makes me fun to run around in a yellow outfit. Like I'm not stealthy. Look at my bright yellow hood.
Yeah.
Like it
No,
like,
no, yeah. I mean, like I'm curious why you're able to do that with something like the costumes, but not with like the temples. Like if you're I just this idea of pushing myself in this game right now to be doing something I don't want to be doing is so foreign to me because there's so much to do that if I'm ever in a position where I'm like, this is really wrecking my fun right now and I'm not having fun with this game, I just leave. Like I did go through this morning and say to myself, okay, there's like three shrines out there that you found but didn't complete. Let's go ahead and complete those. And part of the reason was because with two of them at least was because they were connected to the construct fights that you need to do, and I didn't know how to do those at first, so I had run away from them. Right? Because I wasn't having fun. I wasn't going to, in your words, bang my head against the wall because that's not fun. And
right.
so if I'm not having fun, I just don't do it. And the beauty of a game like Tears of the Kingdom is it doesn't mean I turn off the game. I can still keep playing Tears of the Kingdom because there's 1,000 other things to do. I can just go do those instead, but still be playing the game. And I think that's one of the things that Nintendo, like when you say that their games have gotten really big, I think this is one of the things that they've really worked towards is that they had a reputation for so long of like Nintendo hard and like like this is your type of Nintendo game versus this is your type of Nintendo game, and they really wanted to break that. And so they've done that a lot of work on a lot of their different games, a lot of their different genres to create environments where like we talked about Mario Odyssey earlier. Like if I'm in a world where I'm not having fun, or if I'm even just going after a certain goal in a world that I'm not having fun with, that's okay because there's 6 other moons I know about that I can go for instead, right? Like that is just like par for the course with that game for me. I would go into a world for a little bit, have some fun, change my costumes, done, cool, fun. I'm done, not having fun here anymore. I'm gonna go somewhere else, but I don't have to stop playing Mario to do it. And then all of a sudden I look around and I've been playing for 8 hours. Like that is what Nintendo was aiming for, and they've succeeded extremely well with me in that regard. And I get the impression they've succeeded pretty well in that regard with a lot of people.
yeah, no. I want to make sure me doing the temple stuff and then ultimately not really digging my findings was not me not having fun. I enjoyed going and doing it. I enjoyed having that goal for myself of completing one a day and then being able on Friday to say, I said I was going to do it and I did it. Like that was
you
still
did frame it though as this is the thing that made you not like Tears of the Kingdom. To be clear, that's how this entire conversation
okay, but
started.
me not having, but it's not about not having
fun. Tears of the Kingdom for me.
It is the thing that broke Tears of the Kingdom for me. It could have been fun, and
you can understand why it sounds like to an outsider what you're saying is this thing was not fun, so like made the game not fun. No. Like that's what you're saying.
Okay, no, it is the outcome that revealed to me a part of this game that like confirmed some of my suspicions.
If you're talking about continuity issues and narrative in open world games, that's not a Tears of the Kingdom problem, man.
Right.
That is an open world narrative issue that people have been working on for years, and Tears of the Kingdom in that regard is one of the best at handling it. Like, so I think that's where it's weird for me, is that you're talking about this as this is revelatory to you, and maybe it is because you don't play a lot of open world games. But in all honesty, this is one of the best open world narrative experiences I have ever had, and this is coming from somebody that adores open world games. But one of the goofiest, jankiest things about open world games is like running into somebody who's just like, "Hey, I need you to go ahead and do this thing for me," and I'm just like, bro, I'm in the middle of fighting a dragon. Like literally it's running behind me. Like, can we not talk about your dog right now? Like that kind of stuff. Like that is par for the course in open world stuff. And the ways that Tears of the Kingdom doesn't fall into those holes is honestly miraculous.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't play open world games. So it is revelatory to me that this moment is there. And it's just that understanding of like, I don't play them, and then this becomes, maybe it's a confirmation bias, but it's like, but this is one of the reasons why I don't play these games. Yeah, is because this is the stuff, these are the pitfalls of these games by the very nature of the fact that they are open world. Yeah. And then, like, it turns into, well, you don't care about the story, and I'm like, well, I don't care about the story because I play games that are supposed to be narratively driven, and then it's like, here's that story again. And maybe it's because, like, they're not expecting you, like, in the course of 4 days to complete them. They're expecting, the way I said it to Will, right? Because Will is the only person I know in the world who is not touching this Zelda game in any way, shape, or form. I have some friends over in Asia who are like, I'm not playing this game because I'm not interested in it at all, but they still have opinions because of their time with Breath of the Wild. Like Will, I know that Will has not touched Breath of the Wild. I know he has not touched Tears of the Kingdom. So I can kind of bounce all of my thoughts off of him as someone who doesn't understand the world. Thank you for being the cloud that I've been yelling at, Will. I will say that on the show right here, right now. And it feels like what they want you to do is explore temple, explore temple, explore temple, explore temple. Where I did a lot of those explores all together, and then I did the temples all together, so that like natural disruption and breakup of what is revealed every time you complete a temple, it's not a reminder. It was just like, I've already heard this song, but with a different singer.
I don't know if there is any pattern that they expect you to play with. I really don't. Like, I don't feel a pull in any specific direction at any moment. Like, I feel my own stuff, but it is purely my own. I think there's, like, hints that they want you to go talk to the Rito first or something like that, but, like, really, there isn't. And, like, yeah, I don't know, man. There are some quests that I get that feel urgent, and so I go do them right away. There are some quests I get that I'm like, that doesn't sound fun, and I don't care how urgent you sound. I'm not going to do that. And then I go back to them later, and I'm like, oh, this actually turned out to be better than I thought. Or maybe, like, I just wasn't interested that day because I only had 10 minutes to play as opposed to an hour. You know, like, I don't know. I don't feel that overarching voice. Again, it sounds like there is like this mysterious person standing behind you watching you play that you feel like you're trying to get a gauge on what you want them to do, not even necessarily that you're going to listen to them. You're just constantly looking for this, like, the opinion of this person that I don't think exists.
I think the opinion of that person is me from the future. Like it's it's what I want from the game. I don't know how to describe it. It is the fact that like I didn't want them spoiled. So when I had a friend who's like, I'd really like to talk about my time in the fire temple, and I'm like, all right, well, don't talk about it. I'll complete it this week. Or you talking about your time in the water temple, it's like, I'll go complete it this week. Because I want to have discussions. I love talking about video games and talking about movies. That is such a big part of how I enjoy interacting with them. Like, the interaction is only, like, in the moment is only part of it. I like to then share my thoughts and hear other people's thoughts and do it. And weirdly with this game, like, I don't want to have anything spoiled. I don't want to have anything jeopardized in like this experience of seeing the things as new. I don't know. It's weird. It's me. It's a me thing. I know that it's a me thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like,
but like,
I just, like I said, I'm literally gonna stop recording here in a few minutes, and I'm gonna go back to playing my game probably for the next like 6 hours.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna go get a chicken sandwich and then clean the bathroom, and then, like, when everybody else is asleep, I'll probably jump back into the game, and I'll try to finish the quest line that I'm in the process of, which is I'm trying to do the Great Fairies right now. I'll say what I'm in the middle of. Because, like, I finally figured out how to open up the first Great Fairy.
See, why would you do the fairies before you went to any of the temples? Like, I mean, why wouldn't you do the fairies before you went to any of the temples?
I didn't find any of the
power
fairies.
your shit up.
All right.
Like,
see, like, there's the problem. There's the problem right there. Is that question that you just asked me, I then feel like I'm being weirdly prosecuted. I know that you're not, right? But, like...
No, I'm
like,
making a joke, is that you can play it any way you want, Dev.
Okay.
I'm just saying that you talk about the ways in which you went through and did all of this stuff, and, like, I am playing a completely different style than you are, and so your point about like they want you to do this, or your comments about that, feels so weird to me, because like if there is somebody telling me what to do, they weren't telling me to do that.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess it's just, I imagine that behind every game there is a philosophy, and I'm trying to unlock the philosophy of the person who put the game together. Maybe that's like the wrong thing. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that.
No. I mean, if you want to do that, that's fine. But I got to tell you right now, I think a big part of their philosophy is that there is no structured narrative that you're required to follow. And so in your attempts to look for a structured narrative that you feel like you're required to follow, you seem to not be you seem to be actively not using the philosophy that's there. So if your stated goal is to try and find the philosophy of who created this game, then I would suggest to you that you stop doing things that are detrimental to that goal.
Well, noted is what I'm going to say. I don't know what else I can do. I honestly feel like I'm in the end game now after doing the temples. Is how I feel. So like I'm going and exploring. I'm forcing myself to explore, but I feel like at any moment I could like go and be at the end of the game.
I mean, there are people that played through this game, did the temples, went to Ganon, finished, did it in like a 15 to 20 hour experience, and that's all they'll ever play of this game. And like, good on them. That like they got what they wanted from it, and now they're doing other stuff. Like I am feeling like this is going to be the game that I just dip in and out of for like the next like 3 months. Like,
yeah. And I guess I don't love to do that. Like I like to finish a game and then do another game. And then if a game really spoke to me when I don't have...
We spend 2 months talking about how there's no games out that either of us wants to play.
True, there wasn't. Like even Resident Evil 4, I was excited about it, and then it didn't really like set my world on fire the way I was hoping it did. Not the way that 2 or 3 did. I don't know. It's just been like... And here's the thing, like I didn't want to talk about it, but then realizing that here's what I did this week is 4 days of just fucking go with it in terms of watching the Bollywood remake, the 1969 original, and then, just go with it with Adam Sandler so we could talk about it. Our Just Go With It Again episode is available over at the ASVU podcast, just to do a little bit of cross promotion there. And like, that's the one thing I did. And the other thing that I did was beat temples in Tears of the Kingdom. So like...
Are you a masochist?
What?
Are you a masochist?
This week I certainly was. No doubt in my mind that what I did this week is punish myself. Like, undoubtedly, unabashedly, unashamedly, all I did was punish myself this week. And I don't know why. I didn't feel like I did it. It wasn't like self-flagellation needs to be on the menu this second week of June. It just happens to have been how it happened. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope that after today you could start to maybe do something you want to do.
Yeah, well, that's there you go. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add, Sejim?
No, nope. I thought we were wrapping up.
No, we were wrapping. That's it I wanted to say. So if you had like a final thought or something you think that we didn't touch on this week, this would be the time for it.
Nope.
All right, good. Excellent. I'm going to recommend the Dungeons & Dragons movie, Honor Among Thieves. I got to watch that. That was a real shining moment in my week of apparent masochism. So I do recommend it. Even I'm not even a Dungeons & Dragons guy, and it's just a very well put together film. So I recommend that. But on that, if you have anything to say to us, you can find us on Twitter at The Say Report. That's also the best way to get in touch with Sejin, since, as he mentioned earlier, he is off of Twitter. So if you have something you want to say to Sejin directly, sending to at The Say Report and including Sejin's name in it, we'll make sure it gets in front of his eyeballs. I suppose you could also tweet it out, take a screenshot, and put it up on Reddit. Hashtag Sejin, I bet. No, that's not a thing. I don't know how it works.
Reach out to Dev and see if he's making any money off of Twitch yet. You can hit him up at Devin D. Decker.
Wow, man, that just that hurt a little bit. I know what you were doing there, but no. All right. Until then, William, please bring us home. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Sejin Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.